I'm Desmond. I'm from the Action Committee for Entrepreneurship. I'm head the Partnership and Startup Development team at ACE. It's a great pleasure to introduce you to the startup ecosystem in Singapore itself. I will break down by sharing in three parts. First, I will share about ACE. And then after that, I'll share in three ways. What is the past? What is the present? And what is the future of the Singapore startup ecosystem? And how we are engineering ourselves to be one of the ecosystem that is thriving together Vietnam as a whole ASEAN itself. So let me share about ACE. We are the Action Committee for Entrepreneurship. It's the National Trade Association for the startup ecosystem here in Singapore. We are actually established by the government in 2003 as part of project office under then Spring Singapore, now Enterprise Singapore. Before we are relaunched as a private-led and a non-for-profit organization, trade association in 2014, by then our Minister of State, Châu. Our mission is really about advocating on behalf of startups as a trade association. But however, the more important role is to be the catalyst, to be the community builder and enabler to help startups to be able to get connected to other stakeholders such as corporate investors, government agencies, and of course beyond the shores of Singapore. To be really that development when we help startups to be able to scale, not only in Singapore, but beyond the shores, and we work very closely with different partners such as Republic Poly, Enterprise Singapore, JDC, Enterprise Singapore, etc. So because we are privatized, we run a board of directors that comes from the ecosystem. So some of the prominent members include our deputy chairman, which is Marcus from Carousel, which is one of the unicorn in Singapore. And we do have also other representatives from the Institute of Higher Learning and also stakeholders and startup founders themselves. Our patron is Dr. Sansilik, the Minister in charge of Science and Technology and Minister for Manpower. So that's where we work very closely with the Singapore government to synergize efforts to build ground-up initiative to help startups to be able to get connected and grow. So what we do at ACE, we have three pillars, namely youth entrepreneurship. So that's where we work together with the Ministry of Education, the Institute of Higher Learning such as Republic Poly, and as well as National Youth Council, to help to instill the entrepreneurship spirit among the youth in Singapore, which will be a very important emphasis I will share about the ecosystem in Singapore later. It's about helping youth to have an entrepreneurship aspiration so that we can be able to help them to eventually set up their venture with the different universities, polytechnics, and the Institute of Higher Learning. So that's where we have our committee that comes from all the Institute of Higher Learning, including Mr. Neo, who is also on our subcommittee, synergizing efforts to support youth entrepreneurship across all the Institute of Higher Learning and also education institutes in Singapore, so that we can be able to collectively build that entrepreneurship environment, so that the youth can be able to venture out of their comfort zone and set up their own startups. The second pillar is about global connectivity. Singapore definitely is not the end market for startups because we are small. Hence, we really want to help startups to be able to venture out of Singapore, with Singapore as a launch pad, to ASEAN or even Asia Pacific. Hence, we have also organized different mission expansion, to help startups to be able to go different markets, so that they can be able to set up their office over there and also explore that market as a potential market itself. But also, we also want to support foreign startups, global startups that intend to come into Singapore to understand and navigate the Singapore ecosystem here. Hence, the government has decided to set up this entity, which we are pleased to share more later. So So in terms of ecosystem building, we also help, we're able to build this type of like initiative to help more startups to be able to meet stakeholders, right? Whether they are corporates, investors, accelerators, and then also even investors themselves, right? To really get connections so that they can be able to explore collaboration opportunities within each other. Whether it's fundraising, whether it's business development, or whether it's home innovation activities. Right? So in terms of building, right, we have two main types of activities. Community building is very important, right? It's very important to bring the stakeholders to come together. And I do saw that Nana has been building up that ecosystem to come. And it's definitely really important to bring that kind of networking opportunity so that the startups can be able to meet the right stakeholders, right, to explore the right opportunity. And more importantly now, right, we want to also help startups to build up their capacity, right? So in terms of sector, for example, AI, sustainability, right, or even the built environment, that's where we build capacity building with different stakeholders in the different sectors so that they can be able to understand what is the latest trends, what's the latest opportunity, right, so that the startups can be able to explore that particular industry or vertical to be able to explore co-innovation activities together and collaborate thereafter. So let me go to my second part of my sharing, which is the startup ecosystem here. Right. Let me start off with our history of our ecosystem itself. Now, when Singapore was at a crossroad a few years ago in 2001, when then manufacturing is starting to pull out of Singapore, right? That's where the government decided that we need to see what is the next driver of the economy, right? Because more and more manufacturing companies has moved out of Singapore, and that's where we need the next generation to come. As such, that we have developed a national strategy, right, that prioritize we formed the Economic Review Committee, right? That's when then our Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien-loong, right, now our Senior Minister, right, that heads this committee to form a new blueprint, right, on what is next for the Singapore economy, right. And that's where also the several subcommittees are formed, including one that explore about opportunities to promote entrepreneurship and growth of startups in Singapore itself, and how can we able to help them internationalize so that we can build our next MNC or even our next multinational company through this growth. As such that we, of course, Singapore, we want to be really leading it, and we appoint actually a minister in charge of entrepreneurship. At that time, it was the first time a minister was appointed to be in charge of entrepreneurship in the world. Right? So then Minister Raymond Lee was actually appointed as the one that oversees entrepreneurship, and hence ACE was formed, right, as part of the government. Right? That's where our national, public national kinds of movement comes in to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. And that's what Mr. Raymond Lee has said, right, that we have to have that central sense of mission, right, to be able to drive this. So, and that's where ACE, for ourselves at that time, right, we are the one that leads that movement itself to help promote entrepreneurship. Then we came into the next phase where now at that time, right, when entrepreneurship was much more of a norm. And that's where we built up systems, right, to help startup development itself. Right. Hence at that time, we were only about less than 6 BC when we first started off. So a few things has come out. Grants, right? We built up the new grants where to help first-time youth entrepreneurship with like yes, startup, iGEM, right? To help to promote startups, right? So that they can be able to kickstart their venture over there, to ideate and to support proof of concept or real proof of value, right? Projects, so that they can be able to work with companies. Right? So we also build up more mentorship opportunity and accelerator incubator, right? So that we can be able to help them to accelerate or incubate their ideas, right, to realization. Hence, more than 30 incubators and accelerators was developed through the different initiative that the government has built up through incubator event program, and even venture capital. And that's why, like I mentioned, there's only about 6, and hence we want to attract more venture capital to come into Singapore, having this co-innovation scheme, with both the government as well as privately led VCs, to come and co-invest in startups, whether it's seed capital or EDBI, So these are the different units that comes from the government, to invest in startups together with the private sector. And of course, in terms of development infrastructure, we have developed different types of spaces, so that startups can centralize themselves, to work together with companies, together with also academia, and also other stakeholders in the resource facility itself. Hence, for example, like Block 71 and also other nodes are developed to nurture that community company. And that's where Block 71 comes in. Definitely you have heard of Block 71. 71 is here in Vietnam, That's where actually we started off from this branding Block 71, So it's actually launchpad 1 block, Where we decided that we retain 1 block. Initially, that whole estate was meant to tear down, but 3 agencies decided to retain 1 block, to test out startup. Hence, we retained that block and started to have a gathering of startups, and also a one-stop station where startups, entrepreneurs, even ecosystem partners can come together to get access. So hence, with the success of Block 71, it expanded to 3 blocks and eventually it's now having 7 blocks. So that's where we led into the birth of JTC Launchpad at 1 North. And hence, with this, we also have other types of launchpads in Singapore now, with the Jurong Innovation District that is in the west of Singapore, together with the Nanyang Technical Universities, together. And now we are building another launchpad, which is at Punggol District, which is at northeast of Singapore, together with SIT, Singapore Institute of Technology, which is one of the newer universities in Singapore. So, like what I mentioned, Block 7 expanded to different hubs in Singapore, for example, Ho Chi Minh City, Beijing, Jakarta, to really position Singapore, as a global startup hub, to attract more foreign startups also eventually to come in. So we have a lot of success stories. I just want to name 2, that comes out of Block 71. 2 unicorns, which is PetSnap as well as Carousel. They come out from the National University of Singapore, open overseas college, NOC for short, that they are able to went into Silicon Valley, learn about the ecosystem there, and also have exchanges with the founders over there, and they came back to build Carousel as well as PetSnap respectively. As such, they have really become unicorns currently. And now we will share with you later about the types of startups, the unicorns that has evolved from the success of this. So with that, I guess also you have similar experiences, as an Asian country, that our parents at that time always say that you should be a lawyer, you should be a doctor, But with this drive now, there's more and more youth at that time, has managed to say that I decided to go to start up as a venture, to be a co-founder, And as you can see, the growth, the increased vibrancy, from 43,000, to 57 in 2012, and of course the number of employees has also increased tremendously. And you can see that there's more awareness and intent of students, almost about 40%, that once that has really entrepreneurship aspiration. That's because of promoting the entrepreneurial spirit, that's where we are able to move on to our next phase of startups itself. So hence, it was decided that because the vibrancy of the ecosystem has evolved, then was decided to be privatized, to be led by the industry, to have that kind of component of corporates, investors, and also other sector accelerators created to work together, to be able to have that public private partnership to be able to work together on that aspect to grow the ecosystem. So what is it now in Singapore, right, the ecosystem? We have more than 4,500 tech startups in this small country itself, right? More than 500 venture capital and more than 200 incubator and accelerator. Right? Depending on the statistics you have, we have probably more than about 25 unicorns right, in Singapore now, right? With the addition of Singapore's, right, that has evolved recently, and also Aerolo, right, that is also the recent unicorn that is established in Singapore itself. But of course, we always say why Singapore, right, when we talk to foreign startup itself. Of course, I think stability always plays a part, and that's definitely, I think, there's similarities between Vietnam and Singapore. Right? Is we have the same government right, for the last 60 years. Right? And hence, we have that long-term planning right, to be able to have that long-term vision and to see what are the next phase of that entrepreneurship. Right? And we establish a very core enterprise business. In fact, setting up in Singapore takes as quick as 1 hour right, in Singapore. So setting up incorporation can be as fast as 1 hour right, over here in Singapore. Right? And hence there's a very good predictability and in a sense with the infrastructure and as well as also that protection right, that we have right, is a very good place to be able to have the gateway right, to the Asian market itself. So we always like to share that it's about just having Singapore as a launch pad right, to the other markets, right, including Vietnam. Right? So come to able to set up over here as the region economy. So that's the stability that we have, right? I mean, these are just statistics. For example, we are fourth globally, right, as according to Startup Day. But the more important statistics I want to share is really about that IP protection, right? The infrastructure, for example, like digital competitive, right, talent, etc. These are the drivers that convince startups to come to Singapore because of our infrastructure, in terms of our talent, right, and also in terms of our stability that helps startups to be able to consider Singapore as the launchpad to ASEAN region itself or even Asia Pacific. And definitely in terms of that, right, the confidence of the venture capital is also very important because of the stability that we have over here. Right? So this is actually just also statistics that we have. We take about 60% right, of the deal flow, right, and the total amount right, of value right, as compared to the other countries. And that's also something that definitely in terms of expanding into the different markets, right? VCs also have that confidence to be able to select Singapore as that. And of course, in terms of global, we are just below, for example, London, Silicon Valley definitely. But of course, in terms of that, we are also positioned ourselves in terms of number of deals by top 10, right? And also the total amount that we raise in Singapore itself as compared to global cities. So let me talk to you about some policies that Singapore has. Right? So under Singapore's government, we have this initiative called Startup SG. Right? So this is the main program administered by Enterprise Singapore, which is one of the main one statutory board under the Ministry of Trade and Industry over here. So these are the different pillars that they identified, definitely in terms of global connectivity, in terms of also co-innovation packages, human capital, definitely talent, and financing and infrastructure. Right? So I will kind of deep dive into some of them through the next slides. So definitely in terms of grants, right, we have moved on just now we have seen, we have moved from iGEM right, to Startup SG grants. Right? So we provide this like incentive right, to help startups to be able to kickstart or even build projects right, to help together with corporates right, and other stakeholders over here. So for example, our Startup SG founder grant and also actually tech grants can help startups to be able to kickstart their project or kickstart their venture right, to be able to help them. And of course, in terms of talent, right, we also support them in terms of having like secondment of big tech start, like types of talent, such as like A-Star, which is actually our national research institute in Singapore, right, to second their scientists as well as research engineers to work together with startups on projects together, and it is also subsidized by the government itself. And of course, in terms of infrastructure, I mentioned like Launchpad, One Law, as well as mobile distribution. These are the new infrastructure that Singapore wants to build, different nodes across Singapore to support startups across the different regions in the country itself. So it's also very important that the community comes together, right, to be able to help. So in the sense, that's where also the role of ACE and also other stakeholders like Docs and everyone comes in, right, to collaborate together, right, not only in terms of top-down approach such as schemes and grants, right, but of course in terms of opportunity for startups to be able to interact with companies, right, to be able to work, interact with ecosystem partners, right, so that they can explore different opportunities such as like acceleration, right, and to help them to not only venture and scale in Singapore, but also venture out of Singapore. So that's where also very important that community of partners, right, able to work together, right, supporting entrepreneurship startup, right, such as even with public body and the iShells, right, that is very important, which I will hand off to share why it is so. Like I mentioned, right, Singapore has also want to bring more foreign startups to come into Singapore. And this is so, there's various initiatives that the government announced, like, including stage 1. Right. In fact, we just opened the physical center of stage 1 last week, right, by our patron and minister in charge of science and technology, Dr. Tan Sin. So stage 1 is really the joint initiative between Enterprise Singapore and EDB. Economic Development Board, which is also another central board under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and of course in collaboration with the Jurong Town Council, right? That is JTC for sure. It's managed by us, right? We are appointed as operator and serve as the one-stop station to support startups to navigate, right? To help them to understand the ecosystem, the business environment, and eventually help them to seamlessly land into the ecosystem, right? To get them to even get well connected to different stakeholders, right, in Singapore itself. So stage 1 supports in 3 areas, especially for more global startups. We want to link you up with global types of business advisory, right, service providers such as incorporation services, right, bank accounts, right, to help to navigate, right, the business environment in Singapore and eventually the soft land over here. Right. And eventually, of course, in terms of sector focus, that's where we also want to help you to be able to link you up with the different sector with capacity building, right? So that we are able to link you up, for example, like AI, for example, sustainability, right? Sector leaders, so that you can able to really build, explore business opportunity. And of course, with Singapore as a launchpad, right? That's where we work with together with Vietnam with that as Singapore as a launchpad to go into the Vietnam market, right? So that we're able to help startups to be able to scale, right, beyond the shores of Singapore. So, like I mentioned, definitely in terms of the ecosystem, right? That's where the very public-private sector kinds of partnership is very important to help drive the ecosystem, right? Whether it's in the government agencies, whether it's in corporates, whether even scale-ups, right, that can come back to serve the ecosystem, right, to help them, to help especially the earlier stage startups, right, because they have done that, been there, right. It's very important for these entrepreneurs to come back to be able to share their experiences, and also help them to build their ventures, right, thereafter. And of course, with our overseas partner to help these startups also to venture overseas. So that's very important in terms of the startup ecosystem to help Singapore as a small market to be able to grow the different ventures that is in Singapore as well. So if you'd like to find more about stage 1, feel free to scan the QR code or can take a photo or yeah, to be able to learn more, right, what stage 1 offers, and when if you wish to come to Singapore, and do also feel free to also come and visit us at stage 1. But let's talk about internationalization, right, which is another initiative. Right? So Enterprise Singapore has this Global Innovation Alliance, That's why we work with different partners, like in the different stakeholders, including like, for example, Vietnam, right? We have actually one GIA that supports startups, right, to be the springboard to different regions, different cities. So in fact, we have acceleration program in 23 countries, right? We have co-innovation activities in 40 countries, right? Through the different partners that we have in each city, right? So that startups can go venture out Singapore, right? To be able to help them to expand, like, their market, right, over here. And of course, in terms of Singapore, it's also very important that startups can collaborate with the small and medium enterprises or even multinational companies to co-innovate solutions together. Right? So, in terms of the Singapore ecosystem, majority of the startup has moved into a B2B space. Right? Hence, it's very important that startups have this type of opportunity, right, such as the Open Innovation Network, right, or even Open Innovation Platform that IMDA builds up, right, to link them up with problem statement owners, right, to help them to be able to co-innovate, right, to build solutions together, and thereafter build up a test bidding opportunity or POC opportunity, right, to help them to be able to validate their solutions thereafter. So whether is it like innovation challenges such as the Jurong Island Innovation Challenge or through the OIN, OIP, right, startup can be able to get connected with the corporates, right, so that they can be able to also have the other side to be able to build up solutions for digital transformation, which I saw that definitely Dana is also focusing on in terms of the digital transformations for the economy. And of course, in terms of investment, right, like I mentioned, right, it's very important for this public-private sector collaboration, right, that VCs as well as government agencies funds, right, to be able to co-invest together, right. Hence, we have our national investment arm. Now currently it's called SG Growth. Right, so in fact, Seed Capital and EDBI has combined together to become SG Growth. So that is actually our investment arm of the government, right, to co-innovate together with private sector investors, right, to co-invest together. So it's very important that kind of appointed investors that be able to also support startup growth through this type of investment opportunities. And that's where also like different schemes such as SG investors, right, and also SG equity that comes in to help VCs, right, to be able to also has, for example, tax rebates and things like that, right, to help them to set up. In fact, Singapore has probably more than about 600 family offices, or even more as we are speaking actually. Right. So there's also the opportunity in which that also like family offices can come in to also invest in startups itself. And of course, we want to provide deal flow for the investors through various initiatives such as deal finding, where we're able to help startups as well as investors to meet together in different sectors so that they can be able to explore funding opportunities thereafter. Infrastructure, right? Yes, like I mentioned, Launchpad one-off, right, is one of the infrastructure that we have designated, right, as the startup host, right? So it's exactly in 2015, right, as that's where our ecosystem has evolved from, right? Currently 7 blocks, and now currently hosts more than 700 startups. Only one of the highest density of startups in the world now, also. Right? But of course, in the viscosity of self, right, there's also incubator, accelerators, and VCs, right, in the same premise. And of course, in the greater One North region, that's where the National University of Singapore, that's where also like biopolies, media police, which is actually also our different nodes, right, for biological as well as for media companies, right, they can be able to also work together with startups, right. Hence, we want to always centralize the startups together with the stakeholders so that they have close proximity to work together. And also on the digital front, it's very important that we connect. So we do have also the Startup SG network, which is a platform, right, where startups and also corporates, investors to also take a look, right, on what are the different startups, right, what are the different partners they can collaborate with, and also form partnerships. Yeah, so we have just concluded the Singapore Week of Innovation and Technology, which is also an initiative by Enterprise Singapore, driven also by the National Research Foundation of Singapore under the Prime Minister's Office, to foster more collaboration opportunity through this global trade show. So in fact, as part of Switch itself, we also hosted the Slingshot competition, which is the global startup competition that we brought in 60 outstanding startups to come into Singapore and have this competition, to get acceleration through Singapore as a launchpad, to grow their business. Yeah, so that's why also in terms of trade shows wise, it's very important that this also this opportunity, for also startup, to showcase themselves, to whether it's Slingshot, whether it's also the booth, whether it's also business matching, to Switch itself or other trade shows, to able to foster that collaboration opportunity and grow their business thereafter. So this is where the Slingshot supported more than smart 60 markets. In fact, this year, Slingshot, we have more than 6,000 startups that has applied for it, and only 1% has been selected for this. So it's a very competitive kind of competition over here. So we work very closely in terms of the 4 domains, which I will share a bit more, because this is aligned with the national agenda, to focus on these 4 areas itself. Yeah. So this is what I mentioned. So in terms of Singapore strategy now, we are more and more focused toward deep technology. That's where we built this blueprint. It's a 5 blueprint called Research, Innovation, and Enterprise Plan. So in fact, we are now renewing the RIE 2030 plan. But based on RIE 2025 plan, we have invested more than 6 billion funding under RIE, since 2010. And of course, in terms of AI strategy, we do also develop the national AI strategy, to support more AI innovations and building up, with additional 1 billion funding. In terms of focus, we have these 4 areas, manufacturing, trade, connectivity, human health potential, urban solution sustainability, as well as smart nation and digital economy. So that's where the Singapore places more emphasis to support startups or even innovations across different stakeholders, on this area. And that's where also the larger ecosystem comes in, whether it's the National Research Foundation, the Smart Nation Singapore, and even the Info Media Development Authority, IMD for short, that comes in to also support this national strategy together. And it's also very important also to bring the venture builder to come in, because in terms of deep technology, the duration is a bit longer. It takes longer to develop a solution because of the types of technology that you need to develop, the IP that you need to build. And that's where venture builders such as GoInQ, Zaro, etc., the venture builders come in to support their journey to help them to be able to build the solutions together and innovate. And I mentioned AI is another strategy that the government is now pursuing. In fact, we just announced a latest Exciter program together with the NUS Enterprise, which is the innovation arm of National University of Singapore, Microsoft, as well as Enterprise Singapore, to accelerate global startups out of Singapore to grow regional and beyond. So it's very important that the AI startups can be able to work together, with different solutions such as sandbox, test making opportunity, so they can be able to test bed together with government, test bed with the small and medium enterprises, on digital transformation initiative, that now the Singapore government has pushed forward for the national strategy. And of course, like I mentioned, Singapore is never the end market. This is where the government wants to support more startups, to be able to look Singapore as that launchpad, to be able to go into ASEAN. And definitely ASEAN has a lot of opportunities, and we look forward to working with you, on this initiative to bring more startups to Vietnam and other regions, because of, for example, the average age is younger as compared to the developed countries, etc., which give a lot of good opportunities for startups to be able come in from other regions of the world. Also, these are just more stats, right? That these are really opportunities to that really the Southeast Asia ecosystem, right, has for the other startups from other regions such as in the West and etc. Right, to come and tap into the South Asia ecosystem itself, right. So that's where we hope Singapore, right, to be able to support them, and therefore also venture out into the different markets, right? And also in terms of the whole ASEAN. Right, we really want to also support on this initiative to work together, right, to be able to build up this vibrancy of the whole ecosystem in South Asia, right. And this is another step that I mentioned, right. So definitely Vietnam and other countries are also building up, right, in terms of that. So in terms of the combined market valuation, right, you can see it's about $260 billion US, right? So you can see that it's really that value of the whole Southeast Asia ecosystem, right? That is very attractive for a startup to eventually come into this region itself. But of course, I think I would like to share some challenges that the Singapore ecosystem or even South Asia has, right? I think this is something that we also have to say that South Asia is not a homogeneous market. Right? So Singapore's business environment is not the same as other countries, right? Like even Vietnam, etc. So that is also something that we want to work together, right? And hence, over the ASEAN Southward and things like that, we work together, right? To eventually also build that ecosystem collectively together, so that we can be able to bring more foreign startups to come into the region itself and really build up the vibrancy of the economy together, right, as well as ASEAN itself. And of course, I think this is something that is also quite universal, right, not only in South Asia, right, but of course the number of deals, right, and the total volume, right. In fact, I think there's a lot of VCs that are also moving away from this region, right, to go to other countries to fundraise. I think as a collective ASEAN, we also have to look into how can we attract not only startups but also venture capital, right, to come into this region, right. And of course, in terms of the number of deals and also the confidence, right, of the limited partners in South Asia, right, we also need to build up that kinds of compliance, right, etc. Because we know that, for example, the likes of certain unicorns in Indonesia has also affected South Asia as a whole, right, and then cause it to become a winter in Indonesia itself. So it's very important that we also collectively could also bring investment to come into ASEAN to be able to synergize this effort together. So what is like tomorrow, right? I think it's very important that it's always the heart, right? So we talk about the software, we talk about the hardware of what makes Singapore ecosystem tick. But it's very important that the hardware, right? The heart of it, right, is our people, the talent, right? And I think this is something that is very important. So you can see in terms of students, this is actually the statistics by one of our student-led VC, right, Portugal Ventures, right, is led by actually students, right, on how students, right, is getting more and more into startups. Right, and you can see that a lot of the majority comes from the undergraduates. So there's more and more entrepreneurs, right, that is younger. You can see it's about 60%, right, that comes out to start up their venture themselves. And that's where the ecosystem of universities, I understand that a lot of you are also from university and other education institutes, right? Those are very important to build that infrastructure. I think Republic Body leader, Mr. Neo, will share more about how institute be able to build that vibrancy, right, of student entrepreneurs so that they can be able to kickstart their venture. And that's where we want to help the next generation, right, to instill that entrepreneurship spirit, right, to give them the hunger for the youth, right, so that they can be able to think out of the box, right, build new venture, build new solution that impacts a greater good, right, so that they can be able to help society more, right, whether it's climate tech, whether it's social impact, or whether it's another venture, right, So in Singapore, definitely, we work very closely with the different institute higher learning, right, as I mentioned, right, to continue their vibrancy, right, so that the youth entrepreneurs could able to really graduate into the bigger startup ecosystem, right, so can go out of their different institutes, right, to venture out not only in Singapore but also beyond the shores of Singapore, so that they can able to test fit, right, their idea, right, and that's where the different ecosystem partners could work together, right, to help them to graduate upon graduation of their institute, right, to be able to build their real venture and business thereafter. So in that sense, you can see that the university, the polytechnics, build various different initiatives that supports. So even universities and polytechnics, right, they have different things that they build up so that they can build the next generation of entrepreneurs, right? But when I talk about next generation, it's not only in terms of students, right? It's also about the postgraduates. It's also about professors. Right? So in fact, there are more and more professors and also postgraduates that started to build spin-off, right? Whether it's from A-Star, whether it's about university or even polytechnic, right? To venture out, right? And also build solutions to support innovation in Singapore itself. But of course, I think the next phase of the startup ecosystem in Singapore, right, is also at the crossroads. Like I mentioned, there's certain challenges such as like venture capital, and there's also challenges in terms of our ecosystem, right? So the government also has decided. So remember that we have seen when we started off, right, we built a committee. We have now built another committee called the Economic Strategy Review Board, right, helped by our Deputy Prime Minister Tan Chee Yong, right, and as part of that, actually, entrepreneurship is one of the committee that is formed out of ESR. So in fact, there's a conversation now in Singapore, right, how can we able to shape the startup ecosystem, right, the blueprint. And in terms of that, right, there's always three challenges that we will want to support, right, in terms of access to talent, access to funding, and also access to market. These are the three areas that you can see based on the photo and the conversation with the Minister of State, Alvin Tan, and in fact, we just concluded one with Minister of State, Dinesh. Right, that it's very important that this public and private partnership, right, to collaborate together, right, so that we support these three key areas that we are able to grow the Singapore startup ecosystem here, right, to be able to help them to venture out Singapore, right, to be global. That's the most important thing that it's not only the talent, right, it's also in terms of the startups that need to go global over here. I think I'll conclude by this slide over here. I would love to hear questions and queries from you. Right? That the public and private partnership that I mentioned, right, is very important. Right? It's about bringing them together, not only in terms of the government agency, it's also about the institute higher learning, it's also in terms of individual accelerator, the investors, and also MNCs and the companies, right, that can co-innovate solutions together, right, to be able to build up that. So that is where Singapore takes to be able to work with the different stakeholders, both public and private, to help to be able to work with startups, right, so that they can able to have opportunity, right, in Singapore and also beyond the shores. Right. So otherwise, I would love to hear any questions and anything that you'd like to ask me. Otherwise, thank you so much. Right.
Thanks for the sharing. I'm Free from FT University, and I just want to comment on the things that you just shared. Speak English. I'm really impressed with the global market mindset of startup in Singapore, because you say that for Singapore startups, they think of Singapore as a launch pad for the market. And now you even have to fit the market, fit the mindset that they can go back to cater for the local market as the competitive advantage. Whereas in Vietnam, in Da Nang, where I teach my students about startups, they always think about local market first. And I always have to push them to think globally, have to go out and go further away from home. But the students here, the startup here, they always my first market will be Da Nang. Not even in Vietnam, but Da Nang, we only have 1.2 million people here. 3 million after the expansion, but very small market here. But the students they always think about the local market first. So how do you nurture that kind of mindset for students and servicing for them to do local first, and then go back to local market? Thank you.
So maybe Mr. Liu will answer you during the second half. But essentially, maybe I will share from the Singapore perspective, right? It's also giving the global exposure for startup. So when the entrepreneurship scene was evolved, right, the National University of Singapore has developed the NUS Overseas College. Right? So it's very important that the students, right, can be able to have global exposure. That's why we want to bring them to Silicon Valley. That's why we bring them to different leading startup hubs at that time, right, to be able to help them expose what is it meant to be in Silicon Valley, like interact with the startup there, like, and also move them, right, so that they can able to say, oh, actually there's a bigger market out there that I can solve. That's where also the likes of like Khách as well as Carousel, the co-founder actually attended NOC, right, to help them to understand, oh, there's actually bigger kinds of opportunity out there that I can solve, right, so that they can. So it's very important that I guess that you can give them this type of overseas exposure, right, to go to the different nodes. I think probably you can also maybe go with like Republic Poly and all those, right, to able them to go to Singapore to really have that kind of exchanges, right, and thereafter then they have that global mindset, so that they can able to get exposure to really what are the pain points beyond just now. And they are also have interaction, and who knows, they can even have like new ideas spring out of that. Right? So that is something that I guess the Singapore government has been pushing the different university island. Right? So in fact, all the polytechnics, all the university, right, is pushing their students out, right, internship beyond the shores of Singapore, right, to different startup nodes, right, so that they can learn also. Right? We also want to push our students actually also, right, to even actually to understand that there's more opportunity out there also.
Thank you for that. And so I want to share Da Nang is known in Vietnam as the most livable city in Vietnam. So many of my students, they were born here, they study high school here, university here, and they plan to stay here, get married here as well. They never go outside, they never go outside Da Nang. Maybe 1 or 2 trips to Hanoi or Smith City, that's only for visit. They never actually want to go out of that. So maybe in the future I have to push them to go to Singapore, Polytechnic Republic. They can have more international exposures, as I said. Thank you. I will talk to them later to find out more chances for my students to go there.
So, thank you about your sharing about Singapore study ecosystem. So, I think that there are many useful information for us. For me, I am very attention with the global innovation area. So, how can I can join this area? So, can you help me? I think that also you have member inclusivity. Yes, but I think that's very suitable to join this idea. So can you give me some guide and how and guide us how we join this idea?
So, the Global Innovation Alliance, we are happy to link you up with the enterprise audit and to discuss with them. So usually, GIA program, right, usually we need to appoint a GIA partner, right, to be able to work together to help them accelerate into the whole program. But that's where we are happy to see link you up with the enterprise audit. But of course, I guess the other aspect is so working with different institutes such as like ACE or private body, right, to help in this area. Because I think the cities that we have here, right, there's something that we are trying to build up. But of course, at the start, right, before going to the program, right, I think the different agencies are happy to support on the interim until you can be able to officiate yourself into the Innovation Alliance segment. So that's something that probably maybe have to talk with the enterprise body, right? And then of course, who will be a partner? So that's something. In fact, for example, I'll just give you an example. Like Manila is the flight plane. So flight plane is the appointed GIA partner for Manila and Jakarta. Right, so usually enterprise will appoint a private entity to support or even a quasi-government entity to be that GIA partner.
Mời các anh chị có câu hỏi giao lưu với speaker quay.
For the next question, would you introduce yourself, where, which incubator you come from, so that we know you better? Thank you.
My name is Yuan. I am a visiting mentor of Nanyang University, and also I do the innovation business. Yeah. I'm so appreciative for your speech. And I also in Vietnam we have the similar unit like here in Vietnam. And according to your speech, first of all, for the first phase, I interested in how to get the fund to invest to the young business. So I also see that you first of all the public units, and after that you restructure into the private. So maybe it is easier for you to get funding from business, or so I would like to get the experience from you how to get funding at the beginning.
Thank you so much for your question. Yeah. So at the beginning, of course, I think what happened is, of course, Singapore government pays a bit more of the voting, right? So that means the government has come in to be able to kind of bring the grants, the schemes, etc. to support, so that the public sector gets supported. So thereafter, they will co-invest together, right, to work towards that. So essentially it's about so that public-private kinds of partnership, right, that can be able to work together, right, to bring. And of course, I think the flexibility of ACE is because we are a private entity. That's why we also can work together with the corporates, the investors directly, right? So that's where that circle, right, that comes in to be able to have very important for the ICL, right, to work together with also the corporates, the investors, right, to come in, right? So it's not say that it's just having, so you can see it's circular, right? It's very important that also every institute, right, also can build up this ecosystem, right, to work closely. I think you will see later Mr. Neo's feature, right, later about the partnership that you have also, right, whether you're working companies, corporates, and even government agencies. So that's why also the university also can come together, right, to work together with different stakeholders, right, to support the youth entrepreneurship or the student entrepreneurship here. Right? And of course, on the greater picture, right, that's where the government can come in, right, to support them on grants and schemes. Right? So I'll say that we started off from youth entrepreneurship. Right? So that's why we place a lot of emphasis on the universities, the polytechnic, right, to kickstart that journey first. Right? So that they can be able to start that. Once the ecosystem is matured, you can see that it evolved more towards more private led. Yeah. Right. So that's very important that the university can work together with the government and the other players, right, together to build that ecosystem within the university, and then we can explore.
Yeah, another question, so I would like to answer your So when you change the public units into private units, so it means you bring the social business or turn only the business private business. Because at that time we get the investment and also fund from another corporate and also get the government and have to do it in the policy. Yeah. So okay, you can have.
When the civil government or say the case of the public project, when we provide grants to start, it is actually not investment. It is a grant. In a way, it is free money, but it is a very small amount. In fact, we are very mindful that we always tell the staffs, you are an entrepreneur. Don't be a grant entrepreneur. Because grants don't last. Startups must last. So, getting the market is more important than getting the grants. But the grants are helpful to help them start off, making a prototype, doing some research, exploring some new markets, but they are meant to be a little bit of help. They don't make the start. For startups to be successful, they need to have the right product, the right solution, and they need market to agree with them. And that's when customers start to buy from them. So sales revenue is actually more important than price. In our case, we don't convert from government to private. Also, so when we work with our ecosystem partners, when our ecosystem partners invest in startups, they invest as private entities. They invest as private entities, so they do take equity in the startups. And that is something we leave it to the investors and the startups providers to negotiate. And in the case of some of the government vehicles that you see, EDB investment, seeds capital, they have now combined become SGO. This is a government investment vehicle, similar to you may have heard of Temasek. That's a sovereign fund, a government investment vehicle. They don't invest directly. They actually set up private limited vehicles managed by professional fund managers, and they will actually use the money. Most of the time, when they set up this kind of vehicles, they will actually invite the private sector to also form the fund. So you may have heard of Temasek, but Temasek has many investment vehicles in the different areas of the industry. Some in biotech, some in deep tech, some in science, some in AI. So they use different vehicles, and usually they will invite the private sector to also contribute to the fund. And that's when I think they put some discipline into the investment process. And usually these funds are headed by professional fund managers. So when they invest in startups, they take equity as well. And similarly, they have to make sure that the funds perform. So the investments must pay off. I hope that answers the question.
Bạn có phải hỏi họ xếp up hỏi ra sôi động. I ask a question for Mr. Ví dụ như là một cái doanh nghiệp vừa nhận một cái quỹ mà vừa của nhà nước và vừa của các công ty, thì lúc đó thì sẽ vận hành như thế nào? Có phải là đăng ký bảo hiểm xã hội không?
The translator had them please.
Đây là xin lỗi cả nhà vì bây giờ đang hỏi cơ quan quản lý nhà nước để giúp đỡ dùng một việc của mình đang rất là mới với một cái bài học của Singapore giả định như là một cái bây giờ mình có một cái hub như vậy và mình vừa nhận cái phần hỗ trợ của nhà nước, vừa đi huy động vốn từ các doanh nghiệp và các cái nhà đầu tư khác, thì như vậy là doanh nghiệp đó sẽ là doanh nghiệp xã hội nhận xét hay là nó sẽ như thế nào?
Cái chuyện mà mình đây có hiện nay có 2 mô hình mà chúng ta có thể thiết kế liên quan đến câu hỏi của cô Anh. Thì ở Việt Nam thì nếu như chị là một cái tổ chức hỗ trợ khởi nghiệp thì như các vừa đưa Sông Hàn hay cả DS ở đây thì họ khi mà chạy các chương trình đào tạo hoặc đào tạo thì họ vẫn xin kinh phí của thành phố hỗ trợ khởi nghiệp, và bên cạnh đấy thì họ vẫn dùng nguồn tài chính của chính họ và các nhà đầu tư vận hành rất bình thường, và họ apply hồ sơ lên với thành phố thì thành phố hỗ trợ theo cái diện của họ và đồng bằng. Một cách thứ hai nữa thì hiện nay có một cái văn bản pháp lý rất là mới, đấy là mô hình thành lập quỹ đầu tư địa phương và quỹ đầu tư bảo hiểm quốc gia. Thì trong mô hình quỹ đầu tư bảo hiểm thì sẽ có kết hợp cả công tư, nhưng cái này thì chờ em có cần làm nữa. Nhưng mà để thành lập cái quỹ thì đều sau thì vai trò của nhà nước trong việc này sẽ là dẫn dắt, nhưng mà cái này thì cần phải thêm. Nhưng mà cái mà dễ nhất là đang cạn khả thi cái này thì là những cái khu vực thứ nhất thì em thấy cái chuyện câu hỏi. Nhân đây thì em xin hỏi luôn ạ, để hỏi luôn có hai ý, cái ý của chỗ bên bác lâu á, thì có một cái ý là thành phố là cũng nhận ra cái vấn đề là các bạn khởi nghiệp ở đây khi các bạn không có đủ trải nghiệm trên một cái thị trường lớn, thị trường toàn cầu, thì các bạn chỉ giải quyết những vấn đề mà họ thấy liên quan và trải nghiệm đây thôi, dẫn đến bài toán của họ nó không lớn, rồi thứ hai là khách hàng nó cũng không lớn, nói chung là nó bị vướng nhiều cái. Thì giống như bài toán của Thị Huy nói đây thì thành phố thì cũng đã nhận ra vấn đề đấy và đang làm một chính sách, hiện nay là đang đề xuất một chính sách để sửa luôn trong nghị quyết 136 của Quốc hội đấy, là sẽ tài trợ kinh phí cho các dự án khởi nghiệp của Đà Nẵng phát triển thị trường quốc tế trong và nước ngoài, tài trợ trong đấy sẽ tính luôn tài trợ kinh phí ăn ở đi lại, kể cả làm gian hàng ở nước ngoài để ra phát triển thị trường. Thì lúc đấy thì mới phát triển được. Ngoài ra thì trong cái dự thảo đề án Đà Nẵng thành phố đổi mới sáng tạo mà sở sẽ làm thì chúng tôi cũng khuyến khích và có kinh phí để cho hình thành các nhóm phối hợp kết hợp giữa sinh viên của Đà Nẵng, các nhà nghiên cứu của Đà Nẵng với sinh viên của các trường như Republic Polytechnic hoặc các trường quốc tế khác để hình thành những nhóm sinh viên cùng tham gia giải quyết một vấn đề chung của ASEAN hay của một nước nào đấy. Thì như thế nó có cái lợi điểm là chúng ta có ngay một cái nhóm startup quốc tế, nhóm sinh viên quốc tế, và chúng ta chia sẻ mindset với nhau, và nó có cái lợi rất là lâu dài. Nó khiến các bạn có thể phát huy được cái lợi thế thị trường của các bên, và thứ hai là các bạn sẽ có được một mối quan hệ quốc tế ngay từ khi được sinh viên. Thì chúng tôi cũng đã đưa chương trình vào trong cái đề án này của chúng ta và khuyến khích các trường làm như thế, và sắp tới sẽ có kinh phí để các trường làm như thế. Và đây có các trường đây thì rất là mong các trường chúng ta sẽ kết nối với trường Republic Polytechnic, cái trường của chỗ thầy Neo đấy, thì đã có mối quan hệ mang sinh viên của trường sang thực tập với đại học Vi Tân, rồi đại học Vi Tân mang sinh viên sang bên họ, và ở tính theo đơn vị còn tháng thì cái trải nghiệm quốc tế rất là lớn. Và sắp tới thì họ cũng đang bàn kế hoạch sẽ mang rất nhiều sinh viên của Singapore sang đây tiếp trên lĩnh vực là biotech chẳng hạn. Thì đấy là những cái trải nghiệm rất là tốt, và cũng khuyến khích các trường có chương trình thế mang sinh viên của mình những bạn có khả năng khởi nghiệp thì đâu global. Và thứ hai đây còn câu hỏi cuối xin hỏi bác Lâu ấy, là theo cái mô hình của bác ấy thì ngày xưa mình là mô hình đối tác công tư, nhưng cái tổ chức ACD của mình bây giờ trở thành đối tác, trở thành là tư nhân rồi, private sector rồi. Thế thì cái nguồn tài chính và hoạt động của mình thì là lấy cái nguồn gì để hoạt động? Chính phủ trả tiền theo đơn hàng, hay là mình sẽ business, hay là làm cái gì đấy? Thì anh có thể chia sẻ thêm.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Yeah. So, for us, we are actually funded by the government. So, in a sense, there also kinds of that kind of public-private sides of. So we can work independently to be able to support the startup ecosystem by working directly with corporate investors. So the reason why ACE is privatized is because we can able to work directly with the companies and stuff. Right? So that's where we can able to together bring the stakeholders, investors, the VCs, right, to be able to build this initiative, right, to support the startup itself. Right? So it's also very important as at least from Singapore's perspective, right, that as we evolve, right, it must have also come in with the corporates and the other stakeholders to come in to power this initiative together. Right? Because like what Mr. Liu has mentioned, right, we always want to encourage startups, right, to be able to venture out on their own, right, with as little as hand-holding as possible. So it's very important that we must nurture this, create this opportunity, right, so that we can able to help the startups to be able to source the deal flow themselves eventually, right, source the opportunity themselves. We are just creating that opportunity to help them to build a bridge. So it's very important that ACE, right, remains neutral. That's why we are privatized. But yet, of course, we are supported by the government, so that we can work hand in hand with this public-private kinds of partnership, right, together, right, so that in the end, the public sector will be the one eventually to work with the state startups, right, to get funding, get business opportunity, right, and also to help them scale out of Singapore. Right, so that's very important that ACE stay neutral, right, and thereafter still very important to support the startup ecosystem through this model.
Có các bạn nào học viên anh em hỏi thêm ạ? Dạ đi thêm. Chỗ Thế Sơn hỏi gì?
Thank you so much.
Xin cảm ơn chị Dạ. Thì để trước khi tiếp tục chương trình buổi sáng hôm nay thì xin mời tất cả quý vị đại biểu chúng ta nghỉ sẽ làm còn 15 phút. Thì ban tổ chức có chuẩn bị cà phê và trà. Thì xin mời quý vị đại biểu chúng ta có thể mời và dùng tiếp đáp.
đi qua điện thoại rồi thôi. Sắp điện thoại quay.
CLS là gì? Chuyên dùng máy kỳ 2 đâu học tiếp có mà sẽ học
ai mà tới thì rất là nhiều ai cũng đi khởi nghiệp và ai làm không được được ai cũng biết cái này là ai cũng ai quên còn có
Đi học lớp thì ở đây trong thời gian chờ đi vào năm
lại ổn định của con. Ổn định mắng mưa quá anh biết chính xác không? Bây giờ phần mềm này phần mềm để lại này
cái cam này làm gì có chính xác.
Chương trình của chúng ta sẽ
Ví dụ phần mềm chính xác thì mới được.
quý vị đại biểu chúng ta ổn định đúng rồi.
quay mới thắng họ mà cái này đây tại vì live YouTube đâu có live máy tính đâu có live mà YouTube đâu.
View là chế độ xem thì nữa.
Cái này nè, cái này nè.
Cái này có ra này, tí là em xuất luôn file video ra được không?
Rồi tí cái YouTube mình xem trước là tí
YouTube rồi.
Làm cái tài khoản page OBS Studio.
Không có rồi, thằng này không có rồi.
Mở mà chị
Tung này.
với lại nói cái này cái của trong đây này mình chỉnh lại xuống các đơn hàng chỉnh mà zoom tới zoom luôn.
Có chế độ á.
Chế độ gì?
Em cắm vô cái này rồi thì đâu có được.
Như nó không xây dịch khác luôn.
Đúng rồi, em cắm vô cái này rồi hình như là nó không được. Là em cắm vô cái này rồi em phải sử dụng cái này. Còn bình thường mà toán học á thì dùng điều này chỉ qua chế độ 2.
Thứ hai là đây
Chế độ 2 là chế độ 1 là fit đi, chế độ 2 là điều khiển đúng không? Chế độ 3 là các sẽ
nó được đấy 26 này được kiểu này
đâu em cắm thì hiện tại em vô đây chứ đâu không
Được, được. Chế độ 3 tuần. Bây giờ bao nhiêu? Như cắm vô cái app này rồi là đều phải chỉnh zoom qua app luôn á. Cái này cái gì? Thôi để chọn được, ngồi vô nó không phải. Hai có filter nè. Chỉnh được. Được. Coi có filter chưa? Cộng lên bấm có cộng coi. Gì đó? Tên non. Ơi, ở chỗ cái là không lấy tên thôi chứ không phải như ở dưới gì đi. Audio cái này đã đó, audio rồi.
Kính thưa quý vị đại biểu, thì để tiếp tục chương trình thì xin trân trọng kính mời ông Phát triển kinh nghiệm thì Polytechnic sẽ cùng chia sẻ với chúng ta về chủ đề xây dựng hệ thống hệ sinh thái khởi nghiệp tiếp cận từ góc nhìn của trường Polytechnic. Xin trân trọng.
Đi tòa. Có từng được bí kíp. Sáng độ quan trắc là tương phản và gamma là tông màu.
My name is Yokin Kian. Very good to see you here today. And today my sharing is on how the Polytechnic should build a vibrant entrepreneurship ecosystem. And it is divided into 4 parts. Let me just put this on first. The sharing will be divided into 4 parts. In the morning, whatever we have left in the morning, we talked about, I'll share with you a little bit about Republic Polytechnic. I think it's important to understand the institution. Where are some of the focus areas of Republic Polytechnic? And then, of course, our model for entrepreneurship. Then in the afternoon, after lunch, hopefully, I'll see you back here again. We'll talk about how Republic Polytechnic we support our startups from ideation to growth. And very importantly, the last part, we'll share a little bit of our philosophy and our approach in building a vibrant entrepreneurship ecosystem. Okay, so without further ado, on Republic Polytechnic, this is the campus. This is the campus on the left of the screen. You can see this is the campus. Republic Polytechnic is the youngest polytechnic in Singapore. We have altogether 5 polytechnics in Singapore, and because Singapore is very small, so each of the polytechnic actually has a very unique specialization areas. But there is some duplication in terms of, for example, the common areas like engineering and so on. But in Republic Polytechnic, there are actually some focus areas that we are appointed national centers of innovation. Youngest Polytechnic we were established in year 2002. So we are even younger than ACE. ACE as an ecosystem builder was set up in 2001. I was launched in 2001. Republic Polytechnic was 2002. So today we are 23 years old. And altogether we offer 35 diplomas, 7 schools and 6 centers. I will go into detail later. A look at the number of students that we have, about 12,000 full-time students. These are students doing full-time diplomas. They are usually about 17 to 21 years old. And we have about 60,000 part-time students. That's important because all the polytechnics, in fact all the institutes of higher learning in Singapore play a big role in the continuous learning for even adult learners. Okay, so these are what we call the part-time students. Some of them is to further advance their skills. Some of them actually look at taking on a new career. So they come back and be retrained in different areas. So we have about 60,000 of these students. This information is useful because you will see later that our startups And the pool of RP startups actually come from these students and adult students and alumni. And in terms of staff strength, we have about 1,200 full-time staff. If we include the adjunct lecturers, the part-time staff, the numbers are about 1,500. Okay. As I mentioned, we have about 12,000 full-time diploma students, and these full-time diploma students are what we call pre-employment training. They have not joined the workforce yet, so it's pre-employment training for them, and it's provided by 7 schools in the areas of applied science, engineering, business, hospitality, infocom, sports and health, and technology for arts, media, and design. But this is important because you realize that our approach of supporting our ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem, has a lot to do with where our expertise are. If these are the 7 schools, these are all the diplomas, and therefore our lecturers, our team of staff, has expertise in these areas. And for the continuing education and training, it's really a full range of industry-focused, industry-relevant courses to provide continuous training for our adult learners. This is a very important slide to help you understand Republic Polytechnic. These are our areas of focus. We call focus areas. So Republic Polytechnic is actually very strong. We have a lot of experts in agri-food and tech, agri-food and agri-tech. We are actually appointed the Center of Innovation at the national level for agri-food, which means that actually if our students or our startups have projects relating to agri-food or agri-food tech, things that have to do with farm to table, Republic Polytechnic is actually the go-to institution. They come look for us and then they incubate with us. Of course, taking the courses as well. And also in School of Business, our strength is in career counseling, in consumer insights. The School of Engineering is the other big area where many of our startups come from. We are also the Center of Innovation for Supply Chain Management. Again, similarly, this is actually at the national level. So if your company in Singapore or your startup in Singapore focusing on robotics, technology in supply chain management, then Republic Polytechnic is the place to go. Because we have a lot of experts and we have a lot of industry partners in this area. The School of Hospitality, the Republic Polytechnic is the only polytechnic in Singapore that offers a full suite of hospitality courses. So it's an integrated hospitality school. We are the only ones. You have schools in Singapore, you have private colleges in Singapore offering maybe culinary specialization, offering hotel management, but we are actually the full suite of hospitality courses in Republic Polytechnic. And our students participate in World Skills every year, and they usually come back with gold or silver medals for World Skills. And School of Infocoms focus on cybersecurity, data science, and AI. And of course, School of Sports and Health, mobile education. Some of our students are actually working in Outward Bound in Halong Bay. I think, so we do have an MOU with Outward Bound School in Halong Bay, and our students are actually attached there for internships, and some of them after graduation, they actually stay on to work there as outdoor adventure instructors. The School of Technology for Arts, Media and Design focuses on sonic arts and digital content creation. We do have some interesting startups actually coming up from this school because the young people, they like to play games, and this school actually trains them to also develop games. And it came to our attention that we actually had a startup, a group of 5 ladies. They actually formed a gaming company to produce music for the top games in the world. So they sell their products to the top games in the world. They sell their music. So some of the games that you may be playing, the music actually comes from this startup in RP that is held by 5 girls, 5 ladies. Interestingly, when we look at them, we ask them, they are in a great position because their expertise is already recognized. They can get investors' interest quite easily. But they are quite happy to be 5 of them just working on their small company and no intention of becoming a unicorn because they just want to be who they are. So we thought, okay, that's acceptable. Sometimes you cannot force it. So startups, whilst the ecosystem builders like unicorns, we also have to be mindful that not all startup founders want to be unicorns. Some of them are quite happy when I know that. Another important thing about Republic Polytechnic is that we believe that we tell our students and our staff we believe that every person has the potential to succeed in life. And this is important because we measure success based on the person's aspirations. You don't necessarily have to be unicorn to be a successful startup. So that 5 ladies I was talking about, they are very happy to be providing for their family, enjoying what they do, and we call it success as well. So this is the concept of a greater me, being better than who I am, being better than what I am. So Republic Poly's role in this whole thing is helping the individual to become greater than themselves before they actually make Republic Poly. Uncovering purpose in life, and at the end of the day, we hope that whether it's in pre-employment students, our full diploma students, the young 17 to 21 years old, or the adult coming to us, they discover greater purpose in life. They get more possibilities, we call it greater possibilities. And of course, at the end of the day, a greater impact. So this is very, I think it's important for me to share this so that you understand our philosophy. Even if you look at startups, you don't necessarily have to be unicorn to be successful. We celebrate every success. We celebrate every milestone. And that's important for ecosystem building. And obviously, for educational institutions, when they join Republic Polytechnic, we want to develop them into certain profile. And for Republic Polytechnic, we are looking at our graduates to be resilient problem solvers. And that incorporates 3 traits. Number 1 is articulate self-starter. And because of the way of pedagogy that we use, some of the university friends here will know what I'm trying to say. The pedagogy that we use is a problem-based learning. So students have to do presentations. Very often, we find that even if they are not so good in speaking, after they graduate from Republic Polytechnic, they are very good, with crowds. They can speak very well, and that's actually one of the traits of the Republic Polytechnic student. But one interesting story that was shared to us was that in Singapore, the Polytechnic students usually will come together and have a dialogue with the minister to share about what are the youth's concerns. And one observation that was shared to us by our colleague from the Ministry of Education is that the first one to put up the hand to ask the minister question will usually be the student from Republic Polytechnic. This is why we say our students are, we want to groom them to be articulate self-starter. And of course, passionate community builder. Many of our students come from underprivileged background, and in fact, they understand that having been in the system for so long and receiving support from Republic Polytechnic from the Singapore government. One of the things that we hope that they will do is when they become successful, they give back to the community. When they are in a position to give back to the community. Big ways, small ways, does not matter. Give back to the community. So you will see that, in my afternoon sharing, you will see that we actually have a lot of startup founders. They are not unicorns yet, but they have achieved some milestones, they have achieved some successes. They come back and share their experiences with the students. They don't charge. So we invite them come back to Polytechnic, share their experiences with students, inspire students, and they do that very willingly and very happily. And this is something that we love about some of us. Of course, one of the traits that is more relevant to my office, which is Office of Entrepreneurship Development, is that we want them to be purposeful game changer. And that goes with the philosophy of whether entrepreneurs look for grants or whether entrepreneurs look for solutions to problems. Okay? We always tell our students and our startups, and we have to keep repeating it because every year we see the new faces, right? We always tell them, don't be a grant entrepreneur. Because grant entrepreneurs don't last. We can support you with some funding for prototyping, some funding for market access. But seriously, if you are a real entrepreneur, you really have to be solving problems. If you can solve problems for Singapore, you are a Singapore startup. If you can solve problems for ASEAN, you are an ASEAN startup. And of course, the point about if you have a solution that addresses a global problem, you are a global startup. So that's how we like to share with our students the perspective. And the term that we use is the universality of the idea. Is this idea applicable to other geographies? Is this solution, is this idea applicable to other countries? If it is, right, you're probably on something very, very big. That's how we talk to our students. And typically, I share this as an archetype that we have sent, for example, to enroll from the top. You look from the top down. Okay? Sam joined us as a 17-year-old boy. Okay? He enrolled in the diploma in electrical and electronic engineering. Okay? And in the process of 3 years with the public polytechnic, he would have joined, co-curricular activity. Co-curricular means it's not compulsory. Okay? A competition about business ideas, idea entrepreneurial challenge. That's organized by our department. He may have signed up for the entrepreneurship boot camp where we introduced to him the basic ideas and concepts of entrepreneurship. And then he decided that entrepreneurship is something that he's very interested in. And as he progresses to year three, he decided to take on the entrepreneurial immersion program. That's the second blue box. This is a program that we organize in lieu of internship. All public polytechnic students must have an industry internship of 6 months before they graduate. This is usually in their final year. But for students who have a good business idea, they can actually apply to be in the entrepreneurial immersion program, and they will be interviewed by mentors, by my team, and we will take a look at not only the business idea, we will take a look at the student's character, whether the person is suitable to actually try the startup. And if he's admitted into the entrepreneurial immersion program, some funding will be provided to help him transform his idea into a prototype. Okay, so this is what they do for 6 months. Instead of an internship, they will run their own startup, so to speak. And during that 6 months of entrepreneurial immersion program, we will also curate opportunities for them to attend switch, for them to go overseas. Some of them went to Shenzhen in March this year. Okay? We hope to bring them to Na'an for some of them next year. So that's because we want them to, at the same time as they build their own startups, we want them to be exposed to the global market, to have a global mindset. And we are quite realistic about students from 17 to 21 years old, how many of them can actually do a startup and actually become successful. But we think that failing, we think that pivoting, we think that try another time and try another time and try another time is all part of the learning journey. There's no failure, there's only keep trying. Also, so this is what we encourage our startups. And the earlier they start, the better it is for them if they are keen on innovation. Also for our students, when they are with us in the public polytechnic as a student, if they try their hands at the startup, it is actually quite safe. It's actually quite safe. We provide a safe environment for them to fail, for them to try again, to fail again and try again, and we always encourage them. We say pivoting is normal. Pivoting is normal. Fail fast. Fail fast, don't drag. Fail fast, don't fall. So this is what we usually tell them. Which I will elaborate later. And of course, finally, Sam also took on a minor in entrepreneurship to understand a little bit more about the skill sets that's required. Because as an entrepreneur, you are actually everything. You need to know how to do your accounts. You need to do teaching. You need to do sales. You need to do everything. You know? So the minor in entrepreneurship program will actually help you to acquire some of these skills. And finally, Sam graduated with a diploma in electrical and electronic engineering with a minor in entrepreneurship. And he also started a startup and incubated with RP, our Entrepreneurial Partnership and Innovation Community, which is what we call EPIC. So the entire learning environment at RP is actually geared towards problem solving. And you find that the whole approach of how we provide a learning environment for students, starting from top left-hand corner, the pedagogy that we use is a problem-based learning. So students are given a problem relating to the subject that they study. For example, if you are in engineering, right, you will be presented an engineering problem, and this engineering problem is not imaginary. It's not imaginary. We usually get it from the industry, a real problem, a real engineering problem, and we will put that problem as a case study for the students to then form into small groups. This is on the right hand side, top right hand corner. Form into small groups. Okay. Learn from each other. This is what we call a student-centric collaborative learning approach. And the students will then come up with the solutions, and then they will do a presentation on what is their solution. Okay? So you find that there's always a presentation, and this is where we train the some I was talking about, brilliant self-learner. Right? We want them to be able to speak. Okay? And in terms of assessment, it's not just the traditional, but really we look at a holistic way of measuring the students' achievements, from portfolios, assignments, field reports, industry projects, and so on. Okay? And I was sharing that the problem wasn't come out from the lecturer imaginary, it's actually from the industry. So we work very closely with the industry to make sure that, firstly, our lecturers are updated. It cannot be today, the industry is looking at AI, and we are still back to something that is outdated. So the industry partnership is very important. And all the 7 schools that I was sharing just now, all the 7 schools under the Republic Polytechnic, we have they have their own advisory committee. It's called the School Advisory Committee, and this School Advisory Committee is made up of industry leaders. So the School of Engineering Advisory Committee will have people for example, Singapore Technologies, we have people from leading AI companies, leading startup companies. The School of Infocom, where our specializes in cybersecurity, will have industry leaders from Palo Alto, from Google, sitting in the industry, sitting in the advisory committee, and they will advise the schools on a regular basis. I believe it's once every 2 years, on the curriculum. Whether the curriculum is relevant, and whether the students, after graduating from the Republic Poly, have the right skills to join the industry. So that's something that we pay a lot of attention to, industry relevance. And this is in line with the greater me philosophy that we adopted for Republic Poly. We call this entrepreneurship and greater me, and this is the entire roadmap you can see. As the students join us in year 0 and year 1, Why is there a year 0? Because we do take in students 1 year before they are ready for polytechnic. And we provide what we call the polytechnic foundation program. Also, so these students join us in year 1 and year 0, and this is where we start to engage them. Okay? We call this stage ignite and discover. Okay? Many students come to us at 17 years old, 16 years old, and they have no idea about entrepreneurship. The closest that they have from our conversations with them, they think that entrepreneurship equals to startup. Entrepreneurship equals to unicorn. And then you ask them to name a few, they can name a few like in Singapore, the common ones we hear will be Carousel. Common ones we hear will be those apps. Carousel and Razer, the gaming company. There's some of this, but actually to us it's more than that. Okay? And we will share with them and to explore 3 programs, which include bootcamp, learning journeys. So learning journeys, for example, we bring them to Program 71, we bring them to ACE, fireside chats with RP startup founders, with alumni startup founders, fireside chats with successful entrepreneurs, fireside chats with industry partners, and of course, RP level, that means within the RP competitions, entrepreneurship competitions. And at this stage, what we hope for them to achieve, how we measure our success at this stage is that we hope that the students will understand better what is entrepreneurship. I think some of the points I shared about, for example, that it's not about getting a grant. Entrepreneurship is not about getting a grant. Entrepreneurship is actually about making a difference to the lives of the people coming in the community. Entrepreneurship is actually about doing good. It's actually about improving lives. It's actually about improving communities, improving societies, improving the world. So we wanted to have the right concept, and also the part about a successful entrepreneur focuses on doing good, focuses on doing good, okay? And not focus should not be on making money. Making money will come. I think all of us have heard that. You will make money. You do the right thing, you will make money, but don't focus on making money. Focus on your solution. Focus on improving the lives of your community. Then you will be successful. And when you're successful, the money will come. This is what we try to do for students. Of course, not with 100% success, but I think where we can make an impact, we make an impact. And in the second year, this is when we have a smaller group of students. Okay? Here we will have a lot of students. Okay? A lot of students will sign up, they will join our competition, they join our bootcamp, and find out more entrepreneurship. But in our second year, we will see a smaller group, and these are groups of students who are a little bit, they have shown a little bit more interest in entrepreneurship. Okay? And they have decided to join us for some of the workshops that we organize. Okay? SOTs. The second point, I&E SOTs, that stands for short overseas trips. So you will be usually between 5 to 7 days. We'll bring them to the region. Our focus is mainly on ASEAN. We have brought students to Vietnam, Da Nang. We also bring students to Jakarta. We also bring students to Malaysia, China, and so on. Our focus is on ASEAN, and we would love to have more students coming here. Again, this is the point about providing them that global perspective. Singapore is really too small. I'm not so worried about Vietnam actually, but Singapore is really too small. In fact, I would encourage myself, please go Vietnam, please go Thailand, but I think if startups start in Vietnam, at least they have a very big market to work with. But I do agree that they do need a global perspective. And then in year three, the students will progress. Again, this will be even smaller group. This is where they start to look at even further depending on skills. The entrepreneurial immersion program that I talked about. And also I&E, innovation and entrepreneurship overseas internships. This is where they work in entrepreneurship ecosystems hub. In Da Nang or anywhere else. They work in startups for 6 months. And actually, the Republic Polytechnic also provide quite a bit of support for the students' expenses in these countries. And how do we do that? I think Ms. Chung will ask me, how do we actually do that? Provide funding for our students' internships overseas. I mean, I cannot imagine asking a Vietnamese partner to pay my student $800 a month. Singapore dollars a month. It's not going to work. So what we do is we actually have a Singapore Philanthropic Association to support us. And these are the in Singapore, the biggest supporter for student entrepreneurship overseas trip is actually the Nghi Policy. I don't know whether you have heard of that. Okay, but these are started by the Teochew entrepreneurs. The Teochew Tokes, and they actually fund the students to go overseas for exposure. So this is something that Singapore government and the Singapore business community is quite good at doing. Some of these successful businessmen, when they reach a certain stage, they may actually want to contribute to society in some ways. And of course, the idea is to find them and ask them to stop. We have just renewed the agreement with them, so they are giving us not only support for the next 4 years until 2030. In fact, I was coordinating the whole proposal to the Nghi Policy for this year, for the support all the way to 2030. They not only have continued to agree to continue the support, but they also increased the amount. And because we told them the cost had gone up, so they increased the amount. So we're very happy because we can continue to have our students here at least until 2030. And I'm confident that we will. Okay, the polytechnic education is 3 years. Okay, this is something unique for Republic Polytechnic, the year 4 and year 5. Some of you may be wondering what's happening in year 4 and year 5. This polytechnic education is 3 years. Okay? But actually for Republic Polytechnic students, okay, if you are involved in entrepreneurship, okay, we invite you to reconnect after year 4 and year 5. To reconnect as an alumni, okay, and we will continue to support you with the RP entrepreneurial ecosystem, the incubation and accelerator programs, funding and grants. More importantly, yesterday there was an interview with Vietnam TV. They asked me, is funding the most important? I told them no, mentorship is the most important. Mentorship is actually more important than funding. And networking opportunities so that they can actually meet the right people. We don't know who are the right people, but they will meet the right people. If there's no networking, it's a lot more difficult. Okay? So we invite them to connect as alumni and continue to support them. Okay? For Singapore, I think some of you may be familiar. Our boys, after graduating from Polytechnic, they have to go to National Service. So this is actually from the entrepreneurial development, from the startup's point of view, this is actually a big obstacle. Singapore National Service is compulsory. They have to go National Service. During National Service, they cannot, by law, they cannot do anything else. They have to do National Service. They cannot do part-time, they cannot do startup, they cannot do all these things. So it is actually a big obstacle to us. And therefore, we also invite them to reconnect after year 5. After year 5, because 2 years of National Service, after they have so-called graduated from the National Service, they can actually reconnect with us, and then we'll look at how to support them. But we all know startup scenes move very fast, technology move very fast. So when they reconnect with us, they may not even continue on existing the same idea. They may have to pivot, or they may have to do something else first. But we believe that the seeds that we planted, from year 1, year 2, year 3, about the mindset, about the skill sets, and also the right values, we'll stay with them for many, many years. Some of our successful startups, they actually tried startups during their polytechnic days. That startup, that idea didn't become very big, but they keep trying. Some of them after National Service, some of them after working for people, then they go into startups again. And today, we have one startup that has just secured Series A funding, valuation at $60 million US. He raised $6 million. I told him bravo, because nowadays, I think some of you will understand, this funding winter for startups. It's very difficult to raise funds. So he managed to raise 6 million from a Japan VC, from his existing shareholder, which was also another piece of advice I gave him. When you make money, make sure your shareholders make money. It will come back to you. When your shareholders meaning they have already invested in you, right? So when your startups become more valuable, help your shareholders make money. Offer them first. Whether they want to invest or they don't want to invest, offer them first. In fact, give them a discount. Don't be afraid to help your shareholders make money. I always tell my startups that. Because if you're successful, your shareholders will come. If they manage to exit, that means if you manage to exit a millionaire, your shareholders make some money. When you do another startup, they will come and ask you, can I invest? VCs, investors are quite straightforward. It's about the returns and investment. So this is some, okay, so I talked about Republic Polytechnic pedagogy. I think it's useful to go into a little bit more details. Teamwork and collaboration, solutions and presentation. Okay. Importantly, the lecturers are not lecturers, they are actually facilitators. The lecturers act as facilitators to guide students through the problem solving process. They don't give the solutions to the students. They don't tell the solutions the answers. They don't tell the students the answers. Okay, this is not, and we actually are we are actually quite strict about that. So we actually audit our lecturers. They are not allowed to give the students solutions. They have to guide the students through the, what we call solution, problem solving process. Okay? And of course, self-directed learning. Given that the lecturers are not lecturers, but they are facilitators, of course we expect our students to be self-directed. And these are the traits, we realize that these are the traits that when we build into the students, that will help them to become better entrepreneurs if they ever do a startup. Okay. This is Ben. Okay. Because I have been talking, I think you also find a little bit boring. So let me show you a video of Ben. Okay. Ben has something to say about the problem-based learning. Okay. Sound?
Yeah, Ben from here. We started off as a group of polytechnic students. During our internship days, we wanted to do something to earn extra pocket money. So what happened was I managed to find a group of customers that's willing to engage us for websites. Then I gathered my classmates as designers and as developers to then build up and fulfill our customer requirements. Few of our classmates are still with us today. From what I understand for Republic Poly, problem-based learning really helps, especially the way we learn problems and how we attend to problems. I feel that the way how it is structured allows you to explore and give suggestions. Even in class-based learning, Proteus just got invested recently. It was a good amount of capital, which helped us to venture into Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and then soon after Xiamen, China, and then now we're moving to Shenzhen, Thailand, Bangkok, and then also Indonesia. I'm going through this process not for me, it's for the bigger picture.
Okay, so you heard from Ben. I think I picked up a few comments from Ben that it may be worth thinking about. It's just a group of polytechnic students wanting to make extra money, but they know that the way to do it is to do what the customers want. I think some of you will notice what he said. Deliver what the customers want. And that was how he got his businesses. And then the last part, Ben also said, it's no longer for himself, but it's for the bigger picture. So some of you may ask me, what is his bigger picture? Anyone want to better guess? Bigger picture. What is Ben's bigger picture? Ben employs quite a group of people. When we talk to him about his team of workers, he's very mindful that every one of his staff or co-founder has family behind. To keep the startup going, he's feeding not just himself, but many families. And some of these families has young children. So there's a deeper meaning to just making money. And I thought that is something very interesting. Because when we asked Ben to share his journey with us, he didn't even ask anything. He said, okay, when do you talk? Then the only thing is that he travels quite a fair bit. He didn't talk about Vietnam. He's expanding into China, he's expanding into Indonesia, Thailand. I'll try to bring him here to come and meet some of you. Let's see whether the schedule allows that next year, maybe hopefully Abbas will serve bring him here. Ben is a very down to earth, good chap, married. Not married. I thought he's married. He's not married. So some of you want to get to know him. So this is Ben. Ben graduated from RP quite some time back, but he started his website thing when he was RP, and it grew into IT solutions company. In China, he's actually Chinese government customer. So one of the common stories for startups venturing into China is that always lose money. Startups going to China always lose money. This is what investors say. So when startups want to go into China, investors are always very worried. Sure. Because China is a very tough market. But for Ben to actually be in China and be making money from Chinese government, I salute you. It takes a lot. Okay. So if I can move on to the second part, which is our institutional model for entrepreneurship. I think we can reserve some of the questions that we have later. So you remember Republic Polytechnic was started in 2002. It's about 23 years old. The Office of Entrepreneurship Development, where we are, it's a very small team, but where we are, even younger. We started in 2021. Okay? And the man in the picture is our then Minister for Education, Minister Chan Chun Sing. Okay? I persuaded him to come and launch Epic. It was right in the middle of COVID. Okay? We have a small window in August 2021. I think you all will remember that is during the COVID time. Okay? Singapore was had a lockdown, and we were planning to, again, the numbers went up, the COVID numbers went up, and then we were thinking, will we another lockdown, or we have a small opening when staff can get back to office. I spoke to my Ministry of Education colleagues and said, I told them, this is the last, incubation office in the Polytechnic. Okay? And if he wants to say something, if the Minister for Education wants to say something, okay, to the incubators, the Polytechnic incubators, okay, this launch will provide him a very good platform to talk about it. So he came, he launched it. It's very important because the feng shui is very good. When the minister come and launch, the feng shui is very good. Okay? No, more importantly, more seriously, the minister came, he launched, and he highlighted one thing. Okay? He highlighted that we named this co-working space, incubation space, entrepreneurial partnership and innovation community, and he emphasized on the term community. He thought it was very meaningful that we are focusing on the community for ecosystem building. Okay? So I appreciated that he came to launch the place, but of course that was how we started 5 years ago. And in terms of our approach, incubating startups in the Republic Polytechnic, okay, we believe in a core of ecosystem support. Okay? The term that I use is core of ecosystem support for RP startups. Okay? You can see from the left to the right, okay, we have almost everything the startups may need. But the interesting thing is this: we don't do everything, but we have everything. How do we do it? Let me share. Academic, technical, industry mentorship. So if the startups require a certain specialized mentorship, okay, we may rope in our 7 schools. Remember just now I talked about the areas of expertise. So if they need support in making music, making sound, then the School of Technology for Arts, Media and Design, okay, their specialization is Sonic Arts. They will be able to support staff. So we actually rope in not only the schools, but we also rope in industry partners to support our staffs in terms of mentorship. More recently, we had an event and then we had a startup that's doing some medical related product. We have a mentor that started a project at one of the hospitals in Singapore. And she came and meet the startups and provided very good advice. So this is what I mean by mentorship support from not just the team here, but also from ecosystem partners that we have. Of course, I think many of you will be familiar. The programs that we run, internships, workshops, fireside chats. It is a question of how many can we do a year, depending on the resources that we have, the manpower that we have. The more the merrier, but we all need a life. So don't work yourself too tired. Balance of everything. At the same time, we also bring our staff to participate in other people's programs. So we are quite inclusive. We don't ring fence our staffs to the programming. We actually encourage our staffs to connect with other ecosystems in Singapore, in the region. If ACE has a program, we will send the ACE program to everybody. If NUS has a program, we will send the NUS program to all the startups. And we love the startups to connect. And they appreciate us for being very inclusive. We don't have competition. We only have partnerships. Remember, it's entrepreneurial partnerships and innovation community. Okay? Then, of course, facility is important. So this is where the co-working space. We have a maker space. We do have a maker space where we have some simple prototyping equipment, 3D printers, laser cutters, some embroidery machines, and so on and so forth. Okay? Basically, the idea of the maker space is that we want to have a place where startups can at least build the prototype, simple prototype, before they actually go commercial or go for production. And of course, startup founders, they have to do everything, but they don't necessarily know everything. So we also recommend to them courses that's conducted by Academy of our so-called Academy of Continuous Education. This is part of the RP. This ACE, Academy of Continuous Education setup. They are the ones that provide courses for the adult learners. I think you saw the numbers just now. We have about 58,000, 60,000 adult learners, part-time learners. So this is the institution, this is the academy that provides the training for these courses. And for example, some startup founders may come in. One of our startup founders, you will see a video of her later. Go, Mama. She built a lactation pot. She needs to know engineering work, how to clean the air, how to reset, self-sanitization, and kind of things. And we actually advise her to go for a course that was conducted by School of Engineering about air quality, airflow and air quality. Okay. And of course, the information on funding and grants, seed funds. Under seed funds, it's important to note again, I emphasize the point. Okay? Our startups can access to some of this funding, okay, but it's not all provided by public program. So we also refer them to ACE, we also refer them to Enterprise Singapore, we also refer them to other agencies that has grants. Okay? And at the same time, we emphasize to them that grants are not the success factor for startups. Grants are good, are useful, but don't rely on grants for startup success. That's something that we emphasize again and again. And IP consultancy and support services, this is where startups, sometimes they know about IP, but they don't really know the intricacies of IP management. What does it mean to file a patent? When should you file a patent? When should you not file a patent? Why should some things remain as trade secrets? Or what is copyright? There's a lot of all these technical, so to speak, legal points about intellectual property. Okay? So we do provide consultancy services. This is not from office again. This is from our Office of Technology Development. They actually have a person who specializes in IP. And of course, market access is the part that we will support the ready startups. I emphasize ready startups. And I was sharing with Mr. Ng just now that how do we make sure that the startups are ready? Actually, we don't. The startups founders, they themselves know whether they are ready or not. How do we make sure that they are ready is because they have to pay. When we bring them overseas, for example, if we invite them to come on a market access trip or market exploration trip to Na'ang, they have to pay for the air ticket. The startups have to pay for the air ticket. They have to pay for the hotels. Then we will tell them which are the dates, what time, when, which day we have arranged for networking session. Then in the networking session, of course, we will invite our local partners, people like your ASC and so on, and maybe even some of the other industry partners. Then we will have these networking sessions. These networking sessions, we will pay. But actually, the networking sessions, is food, venue, it doesn't cost so much. But we want the startups to actually invest in their own overseas market expansion. And by that way, we are fairly assured that the startups, only the ready startups will sign. Either the very rich startups or the ready startups will sign. How do you know what I mean? Okay? But more importantly, as we provide all these things, right, the one that I'm not able to highlight here, is the one that is important for the vibrancy. How do we make sure that this whole thing is very vibrant? It's actually the lubricant. What is the lubricant? The lubricant is actually the software, the events, activities, the people, and all these things that we do. You need to continue to have engagement, you need to continue to have events, you need to continue to WhatsApp them, or those who can tell them this event, that event, this success, that success, so that's the software. That's the lubricant that makes it vibrant. And startups love to do this. And we always tell them, ignore our WhatsApp group, and if it's not relevant to you, but it will be relevant to some other people. I don't know how big is a WhatsApp group. Very big, very, very big. And I always tell them, please don't point any startups to me. Because we have so many startups that sometimes when the startups call me, I actually don't know what is the stage that they're at. I have to ask my officers to actually call them in. So I will tell the startups it's easier for you to contact your contact officer. All the startups with public polytechnic, they will be assigned one contact point. Everybody has the info, and they will actually be in touch with them. So where the Republic Poly is concerned, just now I was talking about the whole ecosystem approach. So this is just to reiterate the point that all the 7 schools and all the 5 centers under the Centers of Innovation under the Republic Polytechnic, we actually take a 1 RP approach to support startups. It's very important because all these schools and all these centers, they have their own leaders. I cannot ask them to do things. I can persuade them to do things, maybe buy them coffee, that kind of things. But it's not, it's not so effective if I have to keep buying coffee. So what happens is that, the leader of the polytechnic, our CEO, she oversees whole Republic Polytechnic, and this is something, the 1 RP approach is something that we, Office of Entrepreneurship Development, put it up as our strategic plan. My principal endorsed, and then it becomes the Republic Polytechnic's approach. And therefore, if you lead any of the centers, if you are head of department, for example, in the School of Business, you will know that this is Republic Polytechnic's approach to entrepreneurship development. And therefore, when we call for help, when we call for working together, when we call for partnership, it's a little bit easier. Also, that is actually support right from the top about how we support our startups. This is some pictures of our incubation space. If you have a chance to be in Singapore, please call on us. We'll be happy to host you. Okay, but some pictures of our space. Of course, we have an event space here. Event space, you will notice that the furniture is actually modular. and we can move them around and shift them around. So this space can actually be converted to a classroom. This space can actually be converted to a product launch space, or a networking space, or just a meeting space, ideation space, meeting space. Okay? We have a co-working space in the center of the slide. We have a co-working space. The co-working space is for startups to register their office and use the space at their office. We don't have physical offices, so it's actually all open concept. But for startups who want to take a particular space, they will actually book the space. It's a little bit more expensive, or we actually charge the startups. And we charge based because we are Singapore government, right? So we charge based on market rate. But because our polytechnic is in the north of Singapore, the market rate is not very high. It's not like Orchard Road, So the rental is actually better. But more importantly, they can actually take up a space here, and when they register their startup as a company, they don't have to go and find a commercial address. When you register a company in Singapore, you need to provide an office address. And for most startups, they will go to somewhere in Shenton Way or some of the business districts, and then they will take an office address, no table, no space, no nothing, only the address. The letters will be sent there, but they actually don't have a space there. And the reason is because they need an office, and they use that kind of address because it looks better than some industry or industrial place, or than some rural areas in Singapore. But our polytechnic, because it's public polytechnic, is actually a government institute of higher learning. It has a certain reputation. So when our startups deal with their customers, when they deal with their potential partners, if they show their address as public polytechnic, it actually helps them. So they actually take they actually sign with us, take a co-working space because they also want the address. Of course, some of them work there, and if you visit us, you will see some of the startups who are working there. This picture shows some of the startups actually go there regularly. And then of course we provide meeting rooms, photocopy machine, air conditioning, Wi-Fi. All these things is part of the deal for the startups. Networking space. There's a pantry there for food and drinks, and a bigger space. Okay? So this is an additional slide that I put in because after a few presentations, I always get questions about what kind of funding do we provide for our startups. Okay? So before I go into detail, I want to emphasize again: funding is good, but it's not the key success factor for startups. Yesterday, Vietnam TV asked me one question. Many young Vietnamese are asking their parents for 100,000, 200,000 US to do their own startup. What do I think about it? So my response is, I talked about these young Vietnamese are quite smart. If they take the opportunity of government promoting startups, I ask my parents for money to do the startup. No, startups, the funding is useful, but you don't do that kind of things. You don't. Our startups don't need 100,000 US, 200,000 US to start. You actually need to identify a problem and to have a solution to start. And if you are at the right place, with the right solution to the right problem, okay, there's no short of money. There's a lot of money out there. Okay? But to make things easier, we do provide some funds. We do provide some grants. So what are the grants that we provide? Okay? The first level on the left, okay, is what we call the IDARE Project Fund. Okay? Our IDARE Project Fund starts from as low as a few $100, but the maximum that we give for the IDARE Project Fund is $3,000 Singapore dollars. Okay, the purpose of this fund is to help them do their prototype. We call it the minimum viable product. Okay, 3,000 Singapore dollars. Okay, but it is not a $3,000 check for them. It is actually more on a reimbursement basis. So, for example, if I'm going to make a smartwatch, of course, smartwatch is just an illustration. There's plenty of smartwatch out there. For example, if I have a new invention, a smartwatch, I need to buy the components for the smartwatch. Okay? I will identify the components. Okay? I will go through the purchasing process. Okay? Of course, before I do that, I will need approval that I qualify for the IDET project fund. Okay? And this will be evaluated by the team, my team. Okay? They will look at the idea, they will look at the problem statement, they will look at the solution, and then they will make an assessment. Can this work? If the assessment is yes, this is a viable idea, okay? And the student is worth supporting, okay? We will actually give in principle approval for IDET project fund. Then the students will go about doing their procurement. Every single purchase is being scrutinized. Who is the student buying from? Did the student do a comparison? Then the student will have to pay first, or the startup will have to pay first. Then after claim from us. Also, it's not a $3,000 check and you do anything well. There are processes and systems and processes in place to make sure that it is used for the right purpose, which is to build a prototype. Okay? Then for startups that have already have the minimum viable product, okay? But they may need to test the market. They may need to do market research, okay? Or even thinking of taking that product overseas if they have already proven the market validation. Okay? Then this is where EPIC project fund comes in. These two funds, the IDET project fund and the EPIC project fund, is provided by my office. Okay? The EPIC project fund, of course, will be a little bit more because this is to help them commercialize and go overseas. Okay? The funding is up to 20,000 Singapore dollars. Again, it is subject to claims. So for example, if the startup, tell us that I have this trade show in Da Nang. I want to come to Da Nang for this trade show, okay? And I want to buy my air ticket. Okay? Then we will look at what the startup is, the air ticket, cost and things like that. Okay? We are okay for the startups to buy the normal air ticket. We will not tell the startups, you must buy a budget airline. Okay? But if the startup go for business class, we will start to scratch our head. Something is wrong. You know what I'm trying to say? Because why do you fly business class for example? You will be asking questions at the end, which don't approve. Or we cannot approve. So EPIC project fund, firstly, again, it's an in principle approval thing. Once they have been awarded the fund, it's subject to claims basis. Then at the end of the day, as Republic Polytechnic is part of the government, we are very mindful that we are using taxpayers' money. And it's very important that our startups also recognize that they are using taxpayers' money. And this is where we always tell them, we can provide for you now, or if you are successful, please come give back to the society. And so far so good. Most of the startups are quite decent people. I think not only they want a successful business, but they also want to be a successful person. Making money is not the most important thing. Improving lives of the communities is actually more important. That's what we always tell them. Okay, then of course, once they have reached that level, we think they are actually in a good position. If they are able to get an EPIC fund, they are actually in a good position. We look at some of the other funding mechanisms provided by the national level, including the funding provided by Startup SG founder. This is under the Enterprise Singapore. It's actually more. Funding is up to $50,000. Likewise, same thing. It's also Singapore government money. There are a lot of controls. There are a lot of checks and balance to make sure that the money is used in the right way. My understanding is that all this funding cannot be used to pay founder salary. Cannot be used to pay founder salary. Can only be used to pay for startup expenses for the purpose that the fund is set up. Okay? But more importantly, what we hope to do, what Republic Polytechnic hope to do is for our startups funding routes, we always tell them, go for this one. VCs, investors, high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals. Okay? Because once these guys get involved, once the VCs get involved, or the investor get involved, they will want to make sure that the startup has a good chance of success. There's real money, and they have to answer to their whoever provide the funds. So once they get involved, at this stage, Republic Polytechnic actually play a supporting role. At this stage, once the private sector investment comes in, Republic Polytechnic actually play a supporting role. Supporting role meaning, we don't actively support the startups, but we are always there for the startups to come to us. Why? Because I think the investors are more worried than us, and they are more anxious than us. They are more excited than us to want the startup to be successful. I will share in the afternoon. I will share a little bit more about some of our what we call the mentors, industry partners, and VCs, and how they do some of these things. So how has the office, which is 5 years old, done so far? In 2021, you will look at the number of successful startups. The green color is Republic Polytechnic. The dotted line is the 5 polytechnic add together and divided by 5 average, simple average of the successful startup in Singapore. So you will find that Republic Polytechnic, since 2021, since we set up, when we have 2 successful startups. Today, 2024, since these are all friends, I can tell you we are the number 1 polytechnic in Singapore in terms of number of successful startups. Okay, but how do we measure successful startup? It's not unicorn. It's not unicorn. The successful startup is defined by Ministry of Education. Okay, because we are looking at early stage startup. It's quite different from ACE. ACE is looking at actually a little bit more mature startups. Republic Polytechnic, we are looking at early stage startups. Our success is measured by if the startup meet one of the criteria, which is by no means easy also. Number 1 is that the startup receive a funding, independent funding of more than 250,000 Singapore dollars. For enterprise valuation, the startup valuation has increased by more than 20%. Or the startup has achieved an annual revenue of, that's when you take photo, I cannot share. Don't share with your colleagues. So you see the classification is actually, I'm sharing with you some internal data. Okay? Or the revenue actually crossed 250,000 Singapore dollars, annual revenue. Okay? So this is what we have done for Republic Polytechnic in terms of number of startup successes. Just last year alone, 2024, last year, we have 8 successful startups. Okay? And our friends from Ministry of Education were actually very surprised because the other polytechnics actually find it very difficult. As I shared with you, it's funding limited. Okay? So how do we do it? I've shared with you all the things that we do. If you have further questions, I'm happy to discuss. And this is student participation in innovation and entrepreneurship activities. Okay? Same thing. Republic Polytechnic is the green bar, okay? And the poly average is the dotted line. Okay? So for years, our students have been very interested in innovation and entrepreneurship. And we have been always achieving 15,000 average, about 15,000 participants in our innovation and entrepreneurship activities. And this is where we actually, subsequently, maybe not in the Polytechnic, not during the 3 to 5 years, but subsequently as they join the workforce or they leave Polytechnic, some go to university, they may actually do their own stuff. And we still count that. And this number, in case you're wondering, because we only have 12,000 students, right? This number is includes the repeat count. So if a student take part in one event, take part in another event, that's counted as 2. Okay, so this is the first part of the morning. If I go on to do the third part and the fourth part, I think we will all be very, very hungry. So I propose we take a break. But before the break, if you have any questions, I'm quite happy to share more. Yeah. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you for the sharing of the RT in Singapore. And I'm Queen. I'm from FD University in Na'ang as a private university. So we also have the same kind of the same program that we teach students about startups, and we also give fund for them. And at FD we have a maximum fund of $2,000. So how about the same with $300? Yes, $2,000. My problem is that they don't spend the money. So we also have a claim base that they spend it first and then they claim it back. But at the end of the program, I asked them, how much money have you spent when you approve for $2,000? And they said, oh, we spent about $300, mostly to buy AI programs and different things. So how do you encourage students to take the risk and the willingness to spend more money on the stuff? And my second thought for this one is that as you just shared, you have a lot of our students, so they have been working, they have been in the industry, so they know more about the real life, and they have more experience with what's going on out there, and they more ideas of the problems faced by the society. Whereas for university students, they are still studying, and whenever they propose a problem, they always propose their own problem. They don't think of problems by organizations or by industry standard. So they always try to fix their own problem, and it's really difficult for us as teachers to encourage them to look at the problems by the industries, by the organizations, and to think about their stuff like this. So can you share a bit more?
Thank you very much. First, on the funding, the amount that is used by the student. So I shared our funding is up to $3,000, and that is on a claims basis. The real experience is that the utilization is about 30%. The reason is one of the reasons for us, and we actually looked at why is the utilization. We actually give you $3,000. Why are we not doing $3,000? And I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing because they have to be mindful that the spending is really for the purpose of building the prototype. And in our case, we provide the makerspace facilities for them. A lot of the prototyping can actually take place in the makerspace. They only need to buy the materials. And so, so we are actually not too worried. We are actually not too worried. We will only be, I suppose we will only be worried if the students need to make a prototype, but they don't have enough money. Also, so far our idea funds, startup recipients, they have not come up with a complaint. It's not coming. So I think we are quite happy with the situation that the spending is actually in line with the purpose of the fund. So that's I hope that answers the first question. I'm not too worried about that. Okay. The second question about the ideas of the student. We actually have the same situation. A lot of our students, the ideas will be around problems that they face. So some of the things that we do, I think Desmond in his presentation earlier, he shared about this thing open innovation platform. And the Open Innovation Platform is one platform that allows corporates, companies, to actually share some of their corporate challenges, corporate problems. And some of our students actually go look at these problem statements. They may not be in the position to actually come up with good solutions. But this is one of the ways that we expose them to real world problems. The other big input to making the problem more realistic is actually from the lecturers. Because I think I shared our emphasis on making sure that our staff team are industry relevant. So they have a good context and they keep in regular contact with industry leaders. And this is when lecturers will bring back industry problems. Okay, and this is when students get involved, either in final year projects or in some cases staffs. Quite a few of the good projects, good staff ideas from our students actually were facilitated by our lecturers. Also, so that's another way of plugging the gap. In our case, we also have some students who are quite entrepreneurial. They have been involved in community work even before they joined the Republic Academy. And when they are involved in community work, they will actually come across problems that the community face. So I remember one problem statement where a group of students actually went to a cafe and they saw the cafe was employing special needs staff, and that staff had challenges dealing with certain things that needs to be done in the cafe. So the students actually came up with a solution, an IT solution, to help the special needs person to do the job better. And this one, although the idea may not be may not be needed in many cafes, because not all cafes will employ special needs persons. But it is actually a solution that we call it building an inclusive society. For Singapore, we want our society to be more inclusive, so that our special needs persons can also have a place to contribute in their way. And that was a good solution that was actually profound. One of the exhibitions where minister was. That one was the Minister for Environment, was actually the guest of honor. Also, so there are many ways that we celebrate student successes. May not be a unicorn, may not be a big success, but like in line with what we call greater need, greater impact, and where students come up with something like that, promotes a more inclusive society, we also celebrate success. I hope that answers the question. Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Xin được hỏi bằng tiếng Việt để thông tin truyền lại cho xã. Cảm ơn đã có một cái bài trình bày rất là hay và đáng để học hỏi cho ở góc độ học Đà Nẵng. Đào Nẵng thì cũng giống như VR là cũng có 6 cái trường thành viên. Đấy, giống bên mình là có đang trường Singapore là có 7 cái thành viên. Thế thì cho hỏi 2 câu hỏi. Thứ nhất là cái community này, cái cộng đồng, cái unit này nó sẽ được quay ở trường bạn hay là ở 7 cái trường cái school kia. Giống như ví dụ như ở Đại học Đà Nẵng thì nó nên nằm ở cơ quan Đại học Đà Nẵng, hay là nó nằm ở các trường thành viên, bởi vì các trường thành viên sẽ đào tạo một cái chuyên ngành khác nhau. Dạ. Thứ hai là mình đang thấy cái chương trình được phân bổ cho 4 năm rất rõ ràng, thì không biết là cái chương trình đó thì là những cái tiêu chí đưa ra đó là cái outcome của chương trình học hay là một cái môn học cụ thể. Và nếu như vậy, thầy cô ở trường dạy hay là doanh nghiệp về dạy hay là các cái thành viên ở trong cái cộng đồng của khởi nghiệp đổi mới sáng tạo của trường lập ra đó sẽ phải kết nối, làm cái cầu nối để đưa doanh nghiệp về đây như thế nào? Cảm ơn.
Thank you for the question. Let me try to see whether I get the question correctly. The question was whether the lecturers in the school get industry partners to come and talk to the students. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. So industry relevance is very important, and one of the ways for industry relevance is actually to have industry speakers with the students. Of course, how often, what kind of subjects or what kind of topics will be determined by the the lecturer is in charge of that subject. So I think no different from the other polytechnics in Singapore. We want to make sure that our students are industry ready when they go to work. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are sharing with them the latest in the industry. And one way of doing that is besides our lecturers attached to the industry, it is also to have industry coming into campus. And also the part of the curriculum may also include visiting the industries, going to the corporates to see what they're doing and so on and so forth. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. And then was there also a question about the 7 schools, where are they housed? Okay, the 7 schools are actually all housed on the same campus in the Public Polytechnic. They all report to the CEO. So in order for the schools to support entrepreneurship, okay, the Republic Polytechnic as a whole institution of higher learning must agree that entrepreneurship is important, which is where I come from here. So this is what everybody agrees. Okay? My CEO will say that if you don't agree with this, then you should not be working in the Republic Polytechnic. My CEO will say that. Okay. So whoever works in the Republic Polytechnic must know that the Republic Polytechnic team is working towards this graduate profile. And we want our students to show traits, to show character of articulate self-starter, passionate community builder, and purposeful game changer. Of course, the Office of Entrepreneurship Development, me and my team, when we were coming up with this strategic plan, right, this philosophical approach, right, of building our students, right, we have to convince the senior management team that purposeful game changer is very important. Okay? Because this is my wife's goal. Also, if Republic Polytechnic does not think entrepreneurship is important, right, then of course I have no role. You know what I'm trying to say? So in the whole process of coming up with this desired graduate profile, we landed on these 3 points. It covers quite a lot of areas, but you will realize that the purposeful game changer is actually very close to being an entrepreneur. It's enterprising and transforms ideas into reality. It is very close to entrepreneurship. And this is where, therefore, Entrepreneurship Development Office, this is where the office, therefore, has a big role to work with the rest of the schools and the centers of innovation to support every student's entrepreneurial journey. I hope that answers the question. Yeah. Yes.
Thế thì có một cái sự khác nhau nhẹ giữa trường Singapore Republic với Đại học Đà Nẵng, và bởi vì Đại học Đà Nẵng nó sẽ có các trường thành viên là các trường tự chủ theo đang hướng tới cái câu chuyện tự chủ riêng. Vậy thì như vậy là với cái kinh nghiệm của bạn thì bạn sẽ thấy là cái chương trình này nó phù hợp hơn ở cái trường thành viên nào của Đại học Đà Nẵng. Là Đại học Đà Nẵng có Đại học Bách Khoa, Đại học Kinh tế, Đại học Ngoại ngữ, Đại học Sư phạm, Đại học Kỹ thuật Sư phạm và Cao đẳng Công nghệ Việt Nam và Đại học Việt Nam. 6 trường thành viên vậy thì nó phù hợp hơn để mình có thể mix-match với nhau hơn. Tại vì là các trường theo cái hướng tự chủ riêng thì một cái hội hướng này các trường sẽ có cái hướng khác.
I don't think I want to say that advice is that I don't think I'm in the position to advise, but my observation is that in many of the work that we do, even in ecosystem building, working with the ecosystem partners, VCs, industry partners, government agencies, and so on, it is useful to have a common objective. It is useful to be able to see what success means to everybody. So in Republic Polytechnic's case, for example, if I can share with you this slide. it is something that we are very mindful that success in entrepreneurship is not only a success of the office of entrepreneurship. So every time when we celebrate success, we will make sure that the schools actually benefit. The schools actually celebrate the success together with us. And it's more important to make them feel that it is their success than it is our success. So this is how we, of course, get support from them. If I can use another one. This one. So when we shared this slide was used by my principal, my CEO, when she talked to all the public polytechnic staff. Where she meets all of us 2 times a year, and when she meets us and shares this success, she actually celebrated the success with everybody who was involved in the successful startup, which means included the schools, included the centers of innovation, included the people who actually put in extra time and effort to support the students, mentors, and of course the office of entrepreneurship. Also, I actually, when I showed her the results, this data is from the Ministry of Education. When I actually showed her the results, of course, she said, well done, because we are the ones that's coordinating and leading entrepreneurship efforts. But we make sure that she actually congratulates everybody in the success. So I think I find it useful to understand or to try to understand what success means for everybody in the ecosystem, and therefore how we celebrate this success with everybody in the ecosystem. In the case of a startup, the ecosystem will have, you will have your startup founders, you will have your ecosystem partner like the public polytechnic, you have your VC, you have your government, other government body. When a startup actually achieves success, it means different things to different people. So for public polytechnic, when we have a startup that's successful, the success of the startup means more inspiration for our students. It means more branding for the public polytechnic. It means more vibrancy for the ecosystem that we're building. But we don't make any money. But to the VC, the success means they make money. The VCs, to the VCs, it also means they enjoy a better reputation of choosing the right startup. And to the government entity, I think very much the same as with public polytechnic. It is the branding of maybe Singapore as a successful startup ecosystem. So therefore, the success of the startup, for example, can mean different things to different ecosystem partners. But actually, everybody wants the startup to be successful. So that's what I mean by the shared objective. So I hope that answers the question. I think local situation, you are actually in a better position than us to know what to do. Any more questions? If not, I think we can have a good lunch. So see you after lunch. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Xin cảm ơn ông Neo Kim Chia. Kính thưa quý vị, chương trình đào tạo của chúng ta xin được tạm nghỉ và sẽ trở lại vào lúc 14 giờ chiều ngày hôm nay. Kính mong quý vị có mặt đúng giờ để chương trình đào tạo được đảm bảo tiến độ. Chiều hôm nay thì sẽ có phần trao giấy chứng nhận, nên là đề nghị tất cả quý vị tham dự đúng giờ và đủ thì chương trình chúng ta được tiến độ và những vấn đề đó. Xin cảm ơn mọi người.